All right, let's see if we can get it in one take. We're recording, by the way.
Hi, I'm Andrea.
And I'm Anthony.
And we're from the blog Sweetheart Seeking Sanctity.
That's us.
And we're responding to Claire's video blog series, her Teatime series. And today's one is I think she posted it yesterday, but it's your favorite saint. So we thought we'd talk about our favorite saint together.
Is he your favorite saint too?
Mm-hmm.
His?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yes. Our favorite saint is Padre Pio. Fairly recent canonization. Fairly recent saint. But what's amazing about Padre Pio is he died in 1968. So we have a wealth of information about him that we don't have about earlier saints. But he's also as amazing a saint as somebody like St. Francis of Assisi. He's got those charisms that set him apart from other saints. Stigmata, of course, bilocation, all these amazing things.
And there's lots of stories, like individual people's stories that exist, that are written down based on their personal experiences with him.
Just what's so awesome. You don't really have that with St. Francis or St. Anthony, my patron saint. I think Pope Benedict actually used St. Anthony as an example once of the kind of mythologizing that can happen to a saint. Like, we don't know that much about him, the man. He's been kind of shrunk and reduced to this kind of finder of car keys, which is kind of a disservice to him. I mean, he was called the Hammer of Heretics.
Yes,
there's obviously something more to St. Anthony that doesn't come through over the centuries. He's been kind of made into a sort of effeminate person going like this, or sometimes with the Christ child, which is awesome, but still very effeminate, kind of. Doesn't look like a hammer or a superb preacher like he's supposed to be. Looks kind of wimpy, which is kind of sad. But he wasn't. No. But the great thing about Padre Pio is we have this information about him, personal recollections about him, photographs and recordings and even video, because he's so recent, that we can get a picture of his personality, of his actual...
And finding out that he actually had like a good sense of humor and that he wasn't as stern as some of his pictures make him out to be.
Actually, there's a funny story about Padre Pio in pictures. One of his admirers painted a detailed and loving picture of Padre Pio, which turned out looking extremely stern and forbidding. And he took this picture to Padre Pio to have him bless it and sign it. And Padre Pio looked at the picture, kind of gave this little laugh, and then leaned down and signed it. And what he wrote was not only his name, but he wrote, "Don't worry, it's only me."
Very good sense of humor.
He did. And sometimes people think of him as a little gruff because there are the stories of him using a little tough love on sinners. But God would give him the knowledge of how to deal with each individual soul. So each temperament and personality in each soul in their own individual state needs something a little different. Some people need more compassion. Some people need to be shaken up.
He knew how to be a matchmaker.
He did, yes. He did that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
He did amazing things. What I love about him is his compassion. He would literally take on the sufferings of people who came to him for help so that they didn't have to go through it. He was just the most compassionate, loving person.
And then God would reward him in amazing ways. Like, I love the story about him being able to carry the Christ child. Like in the hallway.
Yes.
One of his, I don't know.
At Christmas time, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who spotted him? I forget who spotted him. But somebody that had like looked out in the hallway and they saw him pace. I think he was pacing up and down the hallway with just like rocking the Christ child.
Mm-hmm. Of course, he went through incredible suffering too. Saints seem to have this. Almost makes you scared to become a saint. They tend to have these almost cycles where they'll go through periods of intense suffering. It seems like Christ has abandoned them, and that seems to have the effect of setting the spiritual, what they've earned in the spiritual life, it sets it in their will. So God will give them all this consolation, all this comfort and beauty, things like that, which will help them move towards Him, and then He'll pull everything away and leave them in what seems to be darkness and emptiness. And then when they continue on in that state, and it depends on the state, how long that lasts or how many times they go through that, but when they continue on, that sets their sanctity in the will, so it's theirs then.
What was
And
the
they've
story? Was that
actually
with his
made
guardian angel? Or no, with the pillow under his head? Or was that with Mary?
That yeah,
That
there
was
was
Mary.
there was that time that Our Lady, he got beat up by the devil, and the friars came in the next morning and found him on the floor with a pillow under his head, and bumps and bruises after they'd heard this horrible noise in the night. And they said, "How did you get the pillow on your head?" And he said, "Well, when it was over, Our Lady came and put it there."
Did he ask where his guardian angel was?
That was another
same time or a
episode.
different episode?
Yeah, early on. These are fairly early on when he's a fairly young friar. He was going through this direct attack by the devil, which tends to happen to some of the great saints like the Curate of Ars and John Bosco. But he had a time when the devil was going after him physically, and his guardian angel came afterwards, and to comfort him, Padre Pio said, "Where were you when he was actually here? What were you doing?" And he actually didn't speak to his guardian angel for a little while after that. But that shows another thing I love about Padre Pio is how human he is.
He liked beer.
He liked beer, yeah. The American GIs, he loved the American GIs in World War II, and they realized that he liked beer, so they'd always bring him beer. He ate very little, but he always had his beer. And
good Midwesterner.
that would have made sense. He's very Italian. So,
There's lots of Italians here.
That's true. There are lots of Italians in this area. I think we sometimes tend to think of saints as being sort of not really human, and kind of a parallel point. We tend to think nowadays, and especially in the secular world. I remember when I was in college. I don't know how we got on the subject of drinking, actually, but the general consensus in the class was that you were more fully yourself when you were drunk because you had no inhibitions.
The Catholic college? Right.
Yeah, the Catholic college. I had a Catholic college I went to.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that was such a misunderstanding of what it means to be human. Our inhibitions, or as we would say simply our good sense and conscience, are a part of what it is to be human because we're rational animals. And we should be using our good sense and not just going with whatever impulses we happen to have. And that corresponds to what St. Thomas Aquinas says. We are above the animals in that we have reason and free will. And the reason, just like an animal has to fulfill its capabilities to become more fully what it's supposed to be, or a plant has to, its final cause is to become this oak, an acorn is the final cause to grow and sprout into this beautiful oak tree. For a human, because we have extra faculties, we have to also develop those faculties. So reason, we really should be educated. We need to know. You need to know God before you can love Him. So it's catechism. You should be educated as much as you can. And then, of course, we have free will, and the final cause of that is God Himself. We need to make the right choices in life to reach God. But the thing is, when we do that, since we are fulfilling what it is in our nature to be, we're becoming more fully human. We're not becoming less human. So to say that we're less human because we're not operating on our base animal impulses is ridiculous. But then the contrary side of that, the more saintly you become, the more you move with your free will and your reason towards God, the more human you are. And you're not leaving humanity behind somehow. And when you read these stories of Padre Pio, you really get a sense of he was human. He was not, he wasn't some sort of mamsy-pamsy, totally unrelatable person with a halo around his head going all the time. He was deeply, deeply human. He had immense compassion, immense empathy.
Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry. That's a good book to read.
Yeah, read Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry. It's a book filled with stories about Padre Pio by people who actually experienced him. He had moods. He had a personality that really comes across in these stories about him. My favorite book about him is actually a book called by a man named John McCaffrey, who knew him very well. I forget the title of the book, but look up John McCaffrey, Padre Pio, you'll find it. He was somebody you could relate to, who had somebody who had his own worries, and yet somebody who was also incredibly, deeply spiritual. And you can see how those things reconcile. That it's not to become more spiritual, you become less human. But to become more spiritual, you become more human. To become closer to God, you become more human.
What God made you for.
Yes. So when we finally reach God in heaven, we will be what we are supposed to be. We'll be more fully ourselves. We'll be more fully human.
Cool.
Yes. So
And so-
Andrea's wonderful Andrea-ness will be even greater in heaven. She
I
won't
never
be less
even knew
Andrea.
I had an Andrea-ness until I met him.
The essence of Andrea, her soul, her Andrea-ness, it makes her herself
You're gonna make me
wonderful.
blush.
She will have even more. She'll be more full. The acorn will become an oak tree, and she will be even more beautiful and wonderful, and more fully herself, not any bit less than she is now.
And when we have our baby, if it's a boy, we plan on naming him Pio.
Yes, because Padre Pio is awesome, and I don't care what anybody says, that is a cool name.
We've had many opinions on this name.
Yes, as you may gather, they're not all good. So...
They will love him. And he will be so cute.
He will be cute. And Pio is a cute name, too. And it's also a masculine name because it's associated with Padre Pio, who's awesome.
And manly.
Very manly. And have an awesome beard.
Beards are
You
cool.
can't get better
Like
than that.
beards.
Yes.
We've come full circle. Padre Pio and beards.
There we go. That's the real reason I
Padre
like
Pio
Padre Pio.
beard
He got a
beards.
spiffy beard. Yes.
But thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.
Yeah.